The mahogany conference table stretched before me like a battlefield where I'd already lost. My stepmother Victoria's manicured nails drummed against its polished surface, each tap a small victory cry. Beside her, my half-brother Daniel leaned back in his leather chair, that familiar smirk playing at his lips. The same one he'd worn since we were children, whenever he got the bigger piece of cake, the better birthday present, the praise I'd worked twice as hard to earn. "Well, Sophia," Victoria said, her voice dripping with false sympathy, "I think we can all agree this division of assets is more than generous, considering your limited involvement in the family business." Limited involvement. The words echoed in the vast boardroom of Morrison Industries, the company my father had built from nothing, the company where I'd spent every summer since I was 14, learning the business from the ground up, while Daniel partied in the Hamptons. But none of that mattered now. Not with the will spread out before us, every word a betrayal I still couldn't comprehend. The lawyer, Mr. Brennan, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He'd known my father for 20 years, had watched me grow up in these very offices. I could see the confusion in his eyes, the same questions I'd been asking myself for the past 3 days since Dad's heart attack. How could this be right? How could the man who taught me everything about integrity and hard work leave me with nothing but a dusty old photograph? "Sophia receives the framed photograph from your father's office," Mr. Brennan read again, as if repeating it might change the words. "The one of the Morrison Industries groundbreaking ceremony." That was it. A single photograph in a tarnished silver frame, currently sitting in a cardboard box at my feet. 23 years of being his daughter, 5 years of working 70-hour weeks in the company, and I was walking away with a picture worth maybe $50 at a garage sale. "I believe that concludes our business," Victoria said, already standing, already dismissing me. "Daniel and I have a board meeting to prepare for. The transition needs to be smooth, you understand." The transition. As if my father's death was just another corporate merger to be managed, I looked at Daniel, searching for any sign of the boy who used to sneak into my room during thunderstorms, who once told me I was the smartest person he knew. But that boy had disappeared years ago, replaced by Victoria's perfectly groomed heir. "This isn't right," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Dad wouldn't—" "Dad's dead," Daniel interrupted, his voice sharp. "And he made his wishes clear. You were always the charity case, Sophia, the daughter from his first marriage that he kept around out of obligation. It's time you faced reality." The words hit me like physical blows. Charity case? Obligation. Is that really what I'd been all these years? "Your mother was a nobody," Victoria added, checking her phone as she spoke, as if destroying my world wasn't even worth her full attention. "A secretary who got lucky. Your father married her out of pity, and he kept you around for the same reason. But blood doesn't lie, dear. Daniel is a Morrison through and through. You? You're just... What was your mother's maiden name again? Hayes? Such a common little name for such a common little girl. If you're watching this and you've ever felt like your whole life was a lie, like everything you believed about yourself was suddenly ripped away, then you know the feeling that was crushing my chest in that moment. But sometimes, the things that break us open reveal treasures we never knew existed. If you want to hear how a dusty photograph changed everything, how the tables turned in ways Victoria and Daniel never saw coming, stay with me. Because this story, it's just getting started. I grabbed the cardboard box without another word. What was there to say? They held all the cards, the company, the houses, the bank accounts, even the family name, apparently. I was just Sophia Hayes now, the secretary's daughter who'd been living a 23-year delusion. The elevator ride down from the 40th floor felt like a descent into hell. Each floor that ticked by took me further from the life I'd known. By the time I reached the lobby, my legs were shaking. The security guard, Thomas, who'd known me since I was in pigtails, couldn't meet my eyes. "I'm sorry, Miss Sophia," he murmured. "Your badge has been deactivated. I'll need to escort you out." Even my key card had been canceled, The humiliation was complete. I made it to my beat-up Honda Civic. Of course, the luxury cars were all company property before the tears came. Ugly, body-shaking sobs that fogged up the windows and left me gasping for air. My phone buzzed with text after text, but I couldn't bear to look. It would either be fake sympathy from people who'd already heard about my disinheritance, or worse, silence from those who were already choosing sides. The drive to my studio apartment in Queens felt like a journey to another planet. From the gleaming towers of Manhattan to the graffiti-covered buildings of my neighborhood, each mile was a reminder of how far I'd fallen. Or maybe, as Victoria suggested, how far I'd never actually risen. My apartment was exactly what you'd expect from someone making an entry-level salary, because despite my father owning the company, he'd insisted I earn my position like everyone else. No nepotism in my company, he'd always said. I'd been so proud of that, so proud of him for his integrity. Now I wondered if it had all been a careful way to keep me in my place. I set the box on my rickety kitchen table and stared at it. One photograph. The sum total of my inheritance. Part of me wanted to throw it in the trash, to reject this final insult. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the memory of my father's hands placing this exact photo on his desk 15 years ago, the day we moved into the Morrison Industries building. Maybe it was the way he used to look at it sometimes during meetings, his fingers absently tracing the frame, or maybe it was just that it was all I had left of him. I pulled out the frame, heavy despite its tarnished state. The photo itself was faded, showing a much younger version of my father standing at a construction site, shovel in hand, surrounded by investors and city officials. The Morrison Industries groundbreaking, 1987. Before my time, before my mother, even before Victoria. The frame was ornate, with intricate patterns carved into the silver. It had always seemed too fancy for a simple corporate photo, but my father had insisted on keeping it exactly as it was. Some things, he'd once told me, are valuable for reasons beyond what we can see. I'd thought he was being philosophical. Now, sitting in my cramped apartment with nothing but this photo and my grief, I wondered if he'd been trying to tell me something more. The back of the frame was covered in worn velvet, held in place by small clips that had rusted with age. I ran my fingers along the edges, feeling the weight of my loss, when I noticed something odd. One corner of the velvet was slightly lifted, as if it had been removed and replaced repeatedly. My heart began to race. It was probably nothing, just wear and tear on an old frame. But my fingers were already working at the clips, carefully removing them one by one. The velvet backing came away easily, too easily, as if it had been designed to be removed. And there, pressed against the back of the photograph, was an envelope. My hands shook as I pulled it free. It was thick, made of expensive paper that had yellowed slightly with age. On the front, in my father's distinctive handwriting, were two words that made my breath catch. For Sophia. Not for my daughter. Not for Sophia Morrison. Just my first name, as if he'd known that by the time I found this, I might not feel entitled to call myself his daughter anymore. Inside the envelope were three things that would change everything. A letter in my father's handwriting, a USB drive, and a second, smaller envelope marked, "Open only after reading the letter." I unfolded the letter with trembling fingers, and my father's voice seemed to fill the small apartment as I read, "My dearest Sophia, if you're reading this, then Victoria and Daniel have shown their true colors, and you're probably questioning everything you've ever believed about yourself and your place in our family. First, let me say what I should have said every day, but was too cowardly to voice. You are, and have always been, the true heir to everything I built. I know this must be confusing. You've just sat through a reading of my will that left you with nothing but this photograph. That will is real, and it was written under duress. Victoria, as you've probably suspected, is not the woman I thought I married. Over the past 5 years, she has systematically isolated me, controlled my medications, and threatened the one thing I care about more than my company, you. She made it clear that if I didn't sign the will she prepared, if I didn't play the part of the father who favored his legitimate son, she would destroy you, not just financially, but completely. She has connections, Sophia, dark ones that I didn't discover until it was too late. She showed me exactly how she could frame you for embezzlement, destroy your reputation, even arrange for accidents that would leave you dead or imprisoned. So I signed her will. I let her believe she'd won. But Victoria, for all her cunning, has one fatal flaw. She underestimates everyone she considers beneath her. She never imagined I would find another way. The USB drive contains everything: recordings of her threats, documentation of her illegal dealings, proof of Daniel's knowledge and participation in the fraud. But more importantly, it contains the real documentation of Morrison Industries, the true corporate structure that she doesn't know exists. You see, my darling girl, the company everyone believes is Morrison Industries is actually just a subsidiary. The real holding company, the one that owns everything, has been in a trust since before I married Victoria. And that trust has only one beneficiary: you. It was meant to transfer to you on your 25th birthday, but if you're reading this, I'm gone, and the contingency clause activates immediately. Victoria and Daniel can have Morrison Industries. Let them think they've won. But Morrison Industries owns nothing. Not the buildings, not the patents, not even the name. Everything is leased from the real company, Sophia Holdings LLC, established the day you were born. Your mother helped me set it up. She was never just a secretary, by the way. She was a corporate lawyer, one of the best, who gave up her career to raise you after we discovered her cancer. The second envelope contains the contact information for Mr. James Chen at Chen, Williams and Associates. He has been managing the True Holdings for 23 years, waiting for this moment. Show him this letter and the USB drive. He'll handle everything else. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you the way a father should. I'm sorry I let you believe you were unwanted these last few years. Every cold word, every dismissal, every moment I seemed to favor Daniel. It killed me, Sophia. But it was the only way to keep you safe until the pieces were in place. You probably hate me right now, and I don't blame you. But know this. Every lesson I taught you about business, every late night we spent going over contracts, every moment I pushed you to be better, it was all preparation for this moment. You're not the charity case, my darling. You're the queen, and it's time to claim your throne. The recording on the USB drive labeled Final Message will explain everything else. Play it when you're ready. And remember, your mother and I loved you more than all the stars in the sky. Forever your devoted father, Robert Morrison, P.S. Victoria's maiden name was Garrett. You might want to look into the Garrett family's history with corporate fraud. Mr. Chen has a file. The letter fell from my numb fingers. I read it again, then a third time, my mind struggling to process what it meant. Everything I'd believed for the last 3 years, that my father had grown distant, that I was a burden, that Daniel was the chosen one, it had all been an act, a performance to protect me from something far darker than simple family politics. I picked up the USB drive with shaking hands and plugged it into my laptop. Dozens of files appeared, meticulously organized and dated. Financial records, legal documents, incorporation papers for companies I'd never heard of. And recordings. So many recordings. I clicked on one at random, dated 6 months ago. My father's voice filled the room, tired and strained. I've told you, Victoria, I need more time to... You've had enough time, Robert. Victoria's voice was different than I'd ever heard it, cold, threatening, stripped of its usual false sweetness. Either you sign the will changes, or Sophia has an unfortunate accident, a car accident perhaps, or maybe she develops a drug problem. Did you know how easy it is to plant evidence? My family has been doing this for generations. You wouldn't dare? Wouldn't I? Should I remind you what happened to your first wife? There was a long pause, then my father's voice broken. Sarah died of cancer. Did she? Are you certain? Because I have documents that suggest otherwise. Documents that could implicate you if they were to surface. Your precious daughter would learn that her beloved father killed her mother. Even if it's not true, the doubt would destroy her. Is that what you want? The recording cut off. I sat in stunned silence, my world reshaping itself with every passing second. My mother's death, my father's coldness, Victoria's cruelty. It was all connected, all part of something larger and more sinister than I'd ever imagined. I opened the file labeled Final Message. My father's face appeared on the screen, older and more tired than I'd ever seen him. This had been recorded recently, maybe only weeks before his death. "Sophia," he began, and tears immediately sprang to my eyes at the warmth in his voice. The warmth that had been missing for so long. "If you're watching this, then I'm gone, and you found my letter. I'm recording this in my office at 3 a.m. while Victoria sleeps, so I must be quick. By now you've read the documents, heard some of the recordings. You know the truth about the company, about Victoria, about everything. But there's more you need to know. Things I couldn't put in writing. Victoria comes from a family of corporate raiders. They identify vulnerable CEOs, infiltrate their lives, and steal their companies from within. She targeted me after your mother died, when I was grieving and vulnerable. By the time I realized what she was, it was too late. She had her hooks in everything. But she made one mistake. She assumed that because you were young, because you were a woman, because you were my daughter from my first marriage, that you were the weak link. She never bothered to truly examine the corporate structure I'd set up with your mother. She never realized that Morrison Industries was just a shell. Everything real, the patents, the real estate, the international subsidiaries, all of it belongs to Sophia Holdings. The documentation is ironclad, created by your brilliant mother who saw this coming somehow. Maybe she knew I was too trusting. Maybe she just wanted to protect you. Either way, her foresight is about to save everything. Mr. Chen has been waiting for you. He's handled everything through offshore trusts and holding companies. Victoria and Daniel can fight for Morrison Industries all they want. They'll be fighting over a company that owes 20 years of licensing fees to Sophia Holdings. The moment you activate your claim, they'll owe you approximately $2.8 billion in back payments. But be careful, my darling. Victoria is dangerous when cornered. Don't confront her directly. Let Mr. Chen handle everything legally. He has a team ready, including FBI contacts who've been building a case against the Garrett family for years. Your evidence will be the final piece they need. I know you must feel betrayed, abandoned, unloved, but every harsh word I spoke to you these past 3 years was agony. Every time I had to treat Daniel as my heir while watching you, my brilliant, capable, true heir, stand in the shadows, it broke my heart. But it was the only way to keep you safe. You are not the secretary's daughter, Sophia. Your mother was one of the most brilliant legal minds of her generation. She built the framework that's about to save you, and you are not my obligation or my charity case. You are my greatest achievement, my proudest accomplishment, the only thing in my life that I did absolutely right. Take the company, take it all. But more importantly, take your life back. Be the woman your mother and I always knew you could be, and know that wherever we are, we're watching, and we're so very proud. I love you, my darling girl. Now go show them what a Morrison woman can do. The screen went dark. I sat in my tiny apartment, surrounded by the shabby furniture and peeling wallpaper, and laughed. It started as a giggle, then grew into full-bodied laughter that probably concerned my neighbors. The charity case, the obligation, the secretary's daughter. Tomorrow, Victoria and Daniel would still be celebrating their victory, planning their takeover of Morrison Industries. They had no idea they'd inherited a shell, a beautiful, expensive shell that owed billions to the real company, my company. I picked up the second envelope, the one with Mr. Chen's information. Inside was a business card with an address in Manhattan, along with a handwritten note. Miss Morrison, I've been expecting your call for 23 years. The board of Sophia Holdings is assembled and ready. Your mother would be so proud. JC. I looked at the clock. It was past midnight, but something told me Mr. Chen would answer if I called. Before I could lose my nerve, I dialed the number. Chen, Williams, and Associates. A voice answered immediately, as if he'd been waiting by the phone. Is this Miss Sophia Morrison? This is Sophia Hayes, I said, testing the name. Or Morrison. I'm not sure anymore. You're Sophia Morrison Hayes, he said warmly, CEO of Sophia Holdings LLC, majority shareholder in 43 subsidiaries, and as of this moment, one of the wealthiest women in New York. Your mother insisted on the hyphenated name in all the legal documents. She said you should never have to choose between the two people who loved you most. The tears came then, but they weren't tears of grief or anger. They were tears of recognition, of finally understanding who I really was. What do I do now? I asked. Now you get some rest. Tomorrow morning, a car will pick you up at 9 a.m. We have a board meeting at the real Morrison headquarters, the one Victoria doesn't know exists. It's time you met your inheritance, Miss Morrison Hayes. All 43 companies, 8,000 employees, and $17 billion of it. 17 billion. The number didn't even seem real. Mr. Chen, I said slowly, Victoria and Daniel, when will they find out? I could hear the smile in his voice. Oh, I imagine they'll receive the legal notices right about the time they're popping champagne at tomorrow's board meeting. We've had the papers drawn up for years, just waiting for this moment. Your father was very specific about the timing, maximum humiliation, he called it. After I hung up, I sat in the darkness of my apartment, holding my father's photograph. The streetlight outside cast shadows across the room, and I thought about the last 3 years of pretending, of watching my father seemingly choose Daniel over me again and again. The pain had been real, even if the rejection wasn't. We'd both been acting, playing parts in a drama designed by Victoria, but directed ultimately by my father's love. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the messages I'd been ignoring. Most were from colleagues at Morrison Industries, either gloating or offering fake sympathy. But one stood out, from Jennifer, my cubicle mate, who'd started the same day as me. Sophia, I don't care what anyone says. You're the smartest, hardest working person in that building. Your dad would be proud of you, inheritance or no inheritance. If you need anything, I'm here. Sweet Jennifer. She had no idea how right she was about my dad being proud. I made a mental note to promote her once I took over. Maybe to Victoria's position. The irony would be delicious. Unable to sleep, I went back to the USB drive and began exploring the files more systematically. The scope of what my parents had built was staggering. It wasn't just one company, but an empire, carefully structured to look like independent entities, while all feeding back to Sophia Holdings. Tech companies, real estate developments, pharmaceutical research facilities, even a small airline. My mother had built Chinese walls between each entity, making it nearly impossible for anyone to trace the connections without the master documents, which only Mr. Chen and now I possessed. There was a folder labeled Sarah's letters, and my heart stopped. My mother had died when I was 3. I barely remembered her. But here were dozens of documents, all addressed to me, dated for different occasions. For Sophia's 16th birthday. For Sophia's college graduation, for Sophia when she doubts herself. I opened that last one, my hands trembling. My darling girl, if you're reading this, you're probably wondering if you're enough. Smart enough, strong enough, worthy enough. The answer is yes, to all of it. But more than that, you're mine. And I was never one to create anything less than extraordinary. Your father thinks he's protecting you with all his elaborate corporate structures, but the real protection I've given you is simpler. I've made you untouchable. Every document I drafted, every company I structured, has one goal: to ensure that no one can ever take away what's yours. But here's the secret, my love. The money isn't your inheritance. Your inheritance is the strength I've coded into your DNA, the brilliance I've nurtured even from afar, and the love that surrounds you even when you can't see it. Victoria Garrett will try to destroy you. I knew her type the moment I met her at that charity gala 2 months before my diagnosis. I saw how she looked at your father, like a predator eyeing prey. I knew I wouldn't be there to protect you both, so I did what I do best. I built a legal fortress so impenetrable that not even someone like her could breach it. When the time comes, and if you're reading this, the time has come, don't hesitate. Don't feel guilty. Take everything. It was always yours. Victoria and Daniel are just thieves who got caught in the most elaborate trap ever set. Your father loves you more than you can imagine. If he's been cold or distant, it's because Victoria forced him to be. But I knew my Robert. He would find a way to get you the truth. The fact that you're reading this means he succeeded. Be brave, my darling. Be brilliant. Be ruthless when necessary. And know that your mother loved you enough to wage a war from beyond the grave. All my love, Mom. I clutched the letter to my chest and sobbed, for the mother I never really knew, for the father who'd sacrificed his relationship with me to keep me safe, for the 3 years of pain that had been necessary but still hurt. But mostly, I cried with relief. I wasn't the charity case. I wasn't the obligation. I was the carefully protected heir to an empire built by parents who loved me more than I'd ever understood. The next morning came too quickly and not fast enough. I dressed in my best suit, the one I'd bought for my father's funeral, black and severe, and the most expensive thing in my closet. It seemed appropriate for what was about to happen. At exactly 9 a.m., a black Bentley pulled up outside my building. The driver, an older gentleman with kind eyes, opened the door for me. "Miss Morrison Hayes," he said with a slight bow. "I'm Harold. I've been waiting 20 years to drive you. Your mother hired me the day you were born, with very specific instructions to be ready when this day came." The drive through Manhattan was surreal. We passed Morrison Industries, where Victoria and Daniel were probably already celebrating their conquest, and continued to a building I'd never paid attention to before, a gleaming black tower that seemed to absorb light. "Welcome to Sophia Holdings," Harold said as we pulled up to a private entrance. "The real Morrison Empire." Mr. Chen was waiting in the lobby, a distinguished man in his 60s with silver hair and intelligent eyes. He took my hands in both of his, studying my face. "You look just like her," he said softly. "Sarah would be so proud." The elevator took us to the 50th floor, 10 floors higher than Morrison Industries' highest point, I noted with satisfaction. The doors opened to reveal a boardroom that made Victoria's conference room look like a storage closet. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, and around the massive table sat a dozen people who all stood when I entered. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mr. Chen announced, "may I present Sophia Morrison Hayes, CEO of Sophia Holdings." The next 3 hours were a whirlwind of presentations, documents, and revelations. The CFO walked me through the financials, not just the $17 billion in assets, but the additional $5 billion in liquid capital sitting in various accounts. The legal team explained the structure my mother had created, so Byzantine and brilliant that it had taken them years to fully understand it themselves. Morrison Industries, the company your father appeared to run, is actually just a management company, the lead counsel explained. It manages the assets of Sophia Holdings, but owns nothing itself. Every patent, every building, every piece of intellectual property is owned by subsidiaries of Sophia Holdings. Victoria and Daniel have inherited the right to manage assets they don't own, and the management contract expires in, he checked his watch, 47 minutes. "What happens then?" I asked, though I suspected I knew. Mr. Chen smiled. "Then we serve them with notice of termination for breach of contract. You see, the management agreement has a morality clause. Any criminal activity by the managing directors results in immediate termination. We have more than enough evidence of Victoria's crimes to invoke it. He pulled up a screen showing security footage from Morrison Industries. There was Victoria in the boardroom, shredding documents. Daniel in his office, transferring files to a personal hard drive. "They're destroying evidence," Mr. Chen explained. "What they don't realize is that all of those documents are duplicates. We have the originals here. Moreover, their actions right now are being recorded and will be added to the FBI file." "The FBI?" I asked. "Oh, yes. Agent Martinez has been building a case against the Garrett family for 15 years. Your father's recordings and documentation are the final pieces she needs. Victoria and her family have done this to 7 other companies. Your father was meant to be number 8, but thanks to your mother's foresight, he'll be their downfall instead." At exactly 10 a.m., Mr. Chen placed a call on speaker. I heard Victoria's assistant answer, then Victoria's imperious voice. "Chen, what do you want? If this is about Sophia, she got what she deserved." "Mrs. Garrett," Mr. Chen interrupted smoothly, "I'm calling to inform you that the management contract between Morrison Industries and Sophia Holdings has been terminated effective immediately for breach of the morality clause. You have 1 hour to vacate the premises." There was silence. Then Victoria's voice, no longer imperious, but confused. "What are you talking about? What is Sophia Holdings?" Sophia Holdings is the parent company that owns all assets currently managed by Morrison Industries. I'm sure if you check your files, the real ones, not the forgeries you've been creating, you'll find the documentation. Morrison Industries owns nothing, Mrs. Garrett. It never has. You've inherited a shell. "That's impossible. Robert left everything to Daniel." "Robert Morrison left Morrison Industries to Daniel," Mr. Chen agreed. "But Morrison Industries is just a management company with no assets. All the real property belongs to Sophia Holdings, which has been held in trust for Sophia Morrison Hayes since her birth. Now, as I said, you have 1 hour." "This is illegal. We'll sue." "Please do. We have extensive documentation of your criminal activities, including recorded threats against Robert Morrison and conspiracy to commit murder. The FBI will be serving their warrant within the hour. I suggest you use that time to contact your attorney." He hung up. The boardroom erupted in applause, but I felt strangely hollow. This was victory, but it didn't bring my father back. It didn't erase 3 years of pain. Mr. Chen seemed to understand. He placed a hand on my shoulder. "Your father knew. This would be bittersweet. He left something else for you." He handed me a small key. "Safety deposit box at First National. He said you should go alone." An hour later, I sat in a private room at the bank, staring at the contents of the safety deposit box. There were photographs, hundreds of them. Pictures of me at every age, every accomplishment, every milestone. And on the back of each one, in my father's handwriting, were notes. Sophia's first day of kindergarten, already smarter than her teacher. Sophia at 10, beating me at chess, the proudest moment of my life. Sophia's college graduation, she thinks I'm distant, but I'm actually trying not to cry. Sophia's first day at Morrison Industries, the beginning of her taking over the world. At the bottom of the box was a small jewelry box. Inside was my mother's engagement ring, not the massive diamond Victoria now wore, but a simple sapphire surrounded by tiny pearls. There was a note attached. "For when you find someone who loves you the way I loved your mother, don't settle for less. You are worth everything." I put the ring on my right hand, I'd earned the right to wear it myself, and returned to Sophia Holdings. The building was buzzing with activity. The news had broken and every financial channel was covering the story. Morrison Industries exposed as shell company. Secret heiress emerges. The Garrett family fraud exposed. My phone rang. "Jennifer, Sophia, oh my God, are you seeing this? Victoria and Daniel were just arrested. The FBI raided the building, and there are rumors that you, is it true? Do you own everything?" "It's true," I said simply. "I knew it. I knew you were special. I mean, I didn't know you were secretly a billionaire special, but I knew you were special. Jennifer, I said, making a spontaneous decision, how would you like to be the new president of Morrison Industries? The real one, I mean, the one that actually owns things. There was silence, then a squeal that probably shattered windows. Are you serious? Dead serious. You're the only person in that building who was ever genuinely kind to me. That matters. As we talked, I watched the news coverage on my office television. My office, in my building, running my company. Victoria was being led away in handcuffs, her perfect makeup smeared with tears of rage. Daniel looked shocked, broken, like he couldn't understand how his guaranteed future had evaporated. I felt a moment of pity for him. He was as much Victoria's victim as I was, raised to be her weapon, taught that cruelty was strength and kindness was weakness. But then I remembered every sneer, every charity case comment, every moment he'd chosen to be cruel when he could have chosen to be kind. He'd made his choices. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. The FBI case against Victoria revealed the true extent of her crimes. She hadn't just defrauded companies, she'd destroyed lives. 3 CEOs had committed suicide after she'd ruined them. 2 others had died under suspicious circumstances that were now being investigated as murders. The investigation into my mother's death was reopened. While they couldn't prove Victoria had caused her cancer, they found evidence that she'd interfered with her treatment, bribing a nurse to swap medications. My mother might have lived if not for Victoria's intervention. The rage I felt was indescribable, but I channeled it into ensuring Victoria would never see freedom again. Daniel tried to reach out once, a pathetic email about how he'd been manipulated, how he'd never known the truth, how we were still family. I didn't respond. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ash. I moved into my father's real office at Sophia Holdings, the one he'd used for the legitimate business while playing puppet at Morrison Industries. In his desk, I found more letters, more evidence of his love and pride. One drawer contained nothing but printed emails I'd sent him over the years, updates on my progress, my ideas for the company, my dreams and plans. He'd saved everyone, annotated with notes like brilliant, implement this immediately, and my genius daughter. The company thrived under my leadership. Free from Victoria's influence and criminal siphoning of funds, we expanded rapidly. I promoted Jennifer as promised, and she turned out to be a brilliant executive. I hired back all the good people Victoria had driven away with her toxicity. Within 6 months, our stock price had doubled. But the best moment came a year later at the annual Morrison Industries Gala, now renamed the Morrison Hayes Foundation Gala. I stood at the podium, looking out at a sea of faces, employees, investors, partners, and journalists. In the back, I saw Harold, my loyal driver, and Mr. Chen, my protector and guide. Jennifer sat at the head table, beaming with pride. "A year ago," I began, "I was told I was a charity case, an obligation, the secretary's daughter who didn't deserve the Morrison name. The people who said those things are now in federal prison, where they'll remain for the next 20 to 30 years. The audience laughed, but I wasn't done. But this isn't a story about revenge. It's a story about love, about parents who loved their daughter so much they built an empire to protect her, about a mother who saw danger coming and built legal fortresses to keep me safe, about a father who endured 3 years of agony pretending not to love me so that I could stand here today." I held up the photograph, the one that had started everything, now in a new gleaming frame. I inherited this photograph, and it changed my life. Not because of what was hidden behind it, but because of what it represented. It was my father's way of saying that things of true value are often hidden, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. That sometimes, what looks worthless contains the greatest treasures. I looked directly into the main camera, knowing this was being broadcast live. To anyone out there who's been told you're not enough, that you don't belong, that you're just a charity case, remember this: Your worth isn't determined by those who try to diminish you. Sometimes the very people who call you worthless are the ones who know exactly how valuable you are and fear it. The applause was thunderous, but I raised my hand for silence. The Morrison Hayes Foundation is launching a new initiative. We're creating a fund for young women who've been disinherited, disowned, or dismissed by their families. Because I know what it feels like to sit in a boardroom and be told you're worth nothing more than a dusty photograph. And I know what it feels like to discover that you were the treasure all along. Later that night, I stood in my penthouse apartment, not the cramped studio in Queens, but a sprawling space with views of the entire city. I held my parents' photograph, the one that had changed everything. In the reflection of the glass, I could almost see them. My mother, with her brilliant legal mind, my father, with his strategic patience. "We did it," I whispered to them. "We won." And somewhere, in whatever comes after this life, I knew they were smiling. The next morning brought a new challenge, as mornings always did now. Running 43 companies meant there was always some fire to put out, some decision to make, some opportunity to seize, but I welcomed it all. This was what I'd been trained for, even when I didn't know it. Mr. Chen knocked on my office door, entering with a smile that told me he had news. "The final verdict came in," he said. "Victoria got 35 years, no possibility of parole. Daniel got 15, with the possibility of reduction if he cooperates fully with ongoing investigations." I nodded, feeling neither joy nor sorrow. It was simply justice, cold and final. "There's something else," Mr. Chen added, his expression shifting. "We've been contacted by 3 other families whose companies were destroyed by the Garretts over the years. They want to know if you'll help them recover what was stolen." "Of course," I said without hesitation. "Set up the meetings." This had become my new mission, not just running my empire, but helping others who'd been victimized by people like Victoria. The Morrison Hayes Foundation had already helped dozens of disinherited daughters reclaim their birthrights or build new futures. But this was bigger. "Oh, and Sophia?" Mr. Chen paused at the door. "Your father would be so proud. Your mother, too." After he left, I turned to the window, looking out at the city my parents had conquered for me. Somewhere out there, another young woman was probably sitting in a boardroom being told she was worthless. Somewhere, another Victoria was scheming to steal what she couldn't earn. But also somewhere, another father was planning 20 steps ahead to protect his daughter. Another mother was building fortresses of love and law. Another photograph was hiding another truth, waiting for the right moment to change everything. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. "The Tokyo deal went through. We're officially international." I smiled, remembering the girl who'd sat in a beat-up Honda Civic crying over a dusty photograph. She'd thought her life was over. She'd had no idea it was just beginning. That night, I hosted a dinner party in my penthouse. Nothing fancy, just Jennifer and a few other trusted friends who'd stood by me through everything. We laughed about the old days, about Victoria's face when the FBI showed up, about how Daniel had apparently fainted when he learned the truth about the company structure. "I still can't believe your mom set all this up when you were a baby," Jennifer said, shaking her head in amazement. "She must have been some kind of genius." "She was," I agreed, raising my glass of wine. "But more than that, she was a mother who loved her daughter. And that, it turns out, is the most powerful force in the universe." "To Sarah Morrison Hayes," Jennifer said, raising her own glass. "The woman who won a war from beyond the grave." "And to Robert Morrison," I added, "who loved his daughter enough to break his own heart to save her." We drank, and I felt their presence so strongly, it was like they were in the room with us. Not ghosts, but love so powerful it transcended death. Later, after everyone had gone home, I sat in my study, a room I designed to look exactly like my father's old office, the one at Morrison Industries where I'd spent so many hours as a child, watching him work, learning the business, never knowing I was learning to run an empire. On the wall hung the photograph, the one that had started everything, but now it was surrounded by others. Pictures of my parents, of the company's growth, of the women we'd helped through the foundation. A wall of triumph born from what had seemed like defeat. My computer chimed with an email. It was from a young woman in California whose stepmother had just stolen her father's company through forged documents. She'd heard about the foundation, about my story. Could I help? I opened a new message and began typing. Dear Miranda, yes, I can help. The first thing you need to understand is that you're not a victim. You're a warrior who hasn't discovered her weapons yet. Let me tell you what my mother taught me from beyond the grave. As I typed, I thought about the patterns. How many Victorias there were in the world, how many Daniels, how many fathers who loved their daughters but didn't know how to protect them, but also how many Sarahs, building fortresses of protection. How many Roberts playing long games to ensure justice? How many Sophias sitting with their dusty photographs, not knowing they held kingdoms in their hands? The city sparkled below me, full of stories like mine, full of secrets waiting to be revealed, full of daughters waiting to discover they were never charity cases at all. They were treasures, hidden in plain sight, waiting for their moment to shine. 3 years later, I stood in a courtroom, watching as another Victoria, this one named Patricia Winters, was sentenced for fraud, embezzlement, and attempted murder. Another young woman, Amy, sat beside me, clutching my hand as justice was served. She was the 37th woman we'd helped through the foundation, but she wouldn't be the last. Thank you, Amy whispered as Patricia was led away in handcuffs. I thought I'd lost everything. You never lose everything, I told her, squeezing her hand. Sometimes you just discover that what you thought was nothing was actually everything in disguise. After court, I returned to my office to find a familiar figure waiting, Daniel. He'd been released early for good behavior and cooperation with authorities. He looked different, smaller, humbled, worn down by prison and the weight of his choices. Sophia, he began, but I held up my hand. I have 5 minutes, I said coolly, settling behind my desk. Say what you came to say. He took a breath, and for the first time since we were children, I saw genuine emotion in his eyes. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know what I did, what I said, how I treated you. It's unforgivable. But I wanted you to know that I understand now. Victoria raised me to be a weapon against you. Every cruel word she taught me to say, every sneer she coached me to perfect. I thought it made me strong. I didn't realize it was making me hollow. I studied him, this broken version of the boy who'd once been my brother. What do you want, Daniel? Nothing, he said, surprising me. I don't want anything from you. I just wanted to say that you were right to let me fall. I needed to fall to understand what I'd become. And I wanted to tell you something about Dad. My attention sharpened. What about him? The night before he died, he called me to his study. Victoria was out, and he told me the truth, all of it. He told me what was in the photograph, what Mom had done to your mother, everything. He said he was going to fix it all, that you would get everything you deserved. I laughed at him. I called him senile. I threatened to tell Victoria he was planning something. Daniel's voice broke. Those were the last words I ever said to our father, that I'd betray him to Victoria. I felt an unexpected pang of sympathy. He knew you were Victoria's creature by then. He wouldn't have held it against you. He said something else, Daniel continued. He said, one day, you'll understand that Sophia was never your competition. She was your salvation. Every success she has will be a reminder of what you could have been if you'd chosen love over greed. We sat in silence for a moment, 2 children of the same father, divided by the woman who'd poisoned one, of us against the other. I'm starting a food truck, Daniel said suddenly. Nothing fancy, just honest work. I'm learning to cook. It's the first thing I've ever done that Victoria didn't plan for me. Good for you, I said, and meant it. He stood to leave, then paused at the door. The photograph, the one Dad left you. He used to stare at it when he thought no one was looking. Sometimes I'd catch him tracing the frame with his fingers, like he was touching something precious. I used to think he was going senile, obsessing over an old picture. Now I understand. He was touching the promise he'd made to keep you safe. He was remembering your mother and the plan she'd put in place. He was thinking of you. After he left, I sat alone in my office, processing this unexpected visit. Daniel would never be family again. Too much damage had been done. But perhaps he could become something else, a cautionary tale with a chance at redemption. My assistant knocked, entering with a package. This just arrived by courier, no return address, but it passed security screening. Inside was another photograph, this one of my mother and father on their wedding day. They looked so young, so happy, so unaware of what was coming. But on the back, in handwriting I didn't recognize, were words that made my blood run cold. The Garrett family has a long memory. Victoria was just the beginning. E.G. Eleanor Garrett, Victoria's mother. I immediately called Mr. Chen and our security team. Within an hour, my office was full of FBI agents and private investigators. Eleanor Garrett, Agent Martinez said, pulling up a file. 73 years old, the matriarch of the family. We've been trying to nail her for 40 years, but she's smart. Smarter than Victoria ever was. She's the one who taught Victoria everything she knew. And now she's coming after me? It appears so. But here's the thing, Miss Morrison Hayes. You're not Sarah Morrison's daughter for nothing. Your mother didn't just protect you from Victoria. She protected you from the entire Garrett line. Mr. Chen pulled out a thick folder. Your mother spent years researching the Garretts. She knew Victoria wasn't operating alone. Every legal structure she built has safeguards against not just Victoria, but any Garrett family member or associate. Eleanor can threaten all she wants. She can't touch you or your assets. But I wasn't satisfied with just defense. What would it take to bring down the entire family? Agent Martinez smiled slowly. I thought you'd never ask. With Victoria's conviction, we have enough to go after several family members. But Eleanor, she's been careful. We'd need someone on the inside. You have someone, I said. Daniel. It took 3 months to convince Daniel to help. Not because he was loyal to the Garretts. He hated them now as much as I did. But because he was terrified. Eleanor Garrett didn't just destroy companies. She destroyed lives, families, entire bloodlines if necessary. But eventually, his desire for redemption won out. He agreed to wear a wire to the family gathering Eleanor had summoned him to attend. I watched from the FBI surveillance van as Daniel walked into the Garrett estate on Long Island. Eleanor sat at the head of the table like a queen holding court, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, all except Victoria, who was serving year 3 of her sentence. Daniel. Eleanor's voice was cultured, cold. I'm disappointed in you. You had one job, secure the Morrison fortune. Instead, you let a little girl outsmart you. Victoria underestimated her, Daniel said carefully. We all did. Victoria was weak, Eleanor snapped. She let emotion cloud her judgment. She enjoyed tormenting the girl too much to see the danger. But you were supposed to be smarter. What do you want from me? Redemption. The family needs the Morrison fortune. More importantly, we need to punish the Hayes girl for what she did to Victoria. You're going to help us. I can't. I don't have access to anything anymore. Eleanor smiled, a predator's grin. But you have access to her. You're still legally Robert Morrison's son. You can claim emotional distress, mental manipulation. We have judges who will listen. You'll break her emotionally and financially with lawsuits until she agrees to settle. And the settlement will be everything. And if I refuse? Then you'll join your father. Heart attacks run in the Morrison family, don't they? My blood went cold. She'd just confessed to murdering my father. You killed him? Eleanor laughed. Oh, Daniel, so naive. Of course we killed him. He was about to expose everything, a little digitalis in his evening brandy, which you so helpfully served him, remember? You're as guilty as we are. Daniel's face went white on the monitor. I didn't know. Of course you didn't. But the police won't care about that, will they? Now, are you with us or against us? This was it, the confession we needed. Agent Martinez gave the signal, and FBI agents swarmed the estate. The looks on the Garretts' faces as they realized they'd been caught was almost worth everything I'd been through. Eleanor maintained her composure even as they cuffed her. "This isn't over," she said calmly. "We have resources you can't imagine." But she was wrong. Over the following weeks, the FBI froze every Garrett account, seized every asset, and arrested every family member over the age of 18. The criminal empire that had destroyed so many lives over generations finally crumbled. Daniel testified against them all, providing crucial evidence about their operations. His testimony about being manipulated into unknowingly poisoning our father earned him immunity from prosecution for that crime, though he'd still serve his remaining time for the fraud charges. The day Eleanor Garrett was sentenced to life in prison, I sat in the courtroom's front row. She looked at me once, and I saw something I hadn't expected: respect. "Your mother was the only one who ever beat me," she said as they led her away. "I underestimated her, just as Victoria underestimated you. The Morrison women were always our match. We just didn't know it until too late." With the Garretts destroyed, I thought I might finally find peace. But peace, I learned, wasn't in my nature. There were too many other Victorias out there, too many other Eleanors, too many young women sitting in boardrooms being told they were worthless. The Morrison Hayes Foundation expanded internationally. We opened offices in London, Tokyo, Sydney, and Dubai. We helped hundreds of women reclaim their inheritances, start businesses, escape abusive families. Each success story was a small victory against everyone who'd ever called a daughter worthless. 5 years after finding the photograph, I was invited to speak at Harvard Business School. Standing at the podium, looking out at hundreds of eager young faces, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. Everyone in this room will face a moment when someone tries to convince you that you're worthless, I began. They'll call you charity cases, obligations, failures. They'll try to steal what's yours and convince you that you never deserved it in the first place. When that moment comes, and it will come, remember this story. I told them everything: the photograph, the letter, the secret empire, the family who'd tried to destroy me, and the parents who'd protected me from beyond the grave. The audience was riveted, hanging on every word. But here's the real lesson, I concluded. It wasn't the money that saved me. It wasn't even the legal structures my mother built or the evidence my father gathered. What saved me was the knowledge that I had been loved. Deeply, truly, sacrificially loved. That love gave me the strength to fight when everything seemed lost. A young woman in the front row raised her hand. "Miss Morrison Hayes, what happened to the photograph? The one that started everything?" I smiled. "It's in my office, on the wall with hundreds of others. But I had copies made. Every woman who comes through our foundation receives one, with a simple message on the back. Your worth is not determined by those who try to diminish you. Sometimes the greatest treasures are hidden in plain sight." After the speech, a line of students waited to talk to me. One young woman hung back until the others had gone. She approached nervously, clutching a worn envelope. "Miss Morrison Hayes," she said quietly, "my name is Rebecca Chen. My mother is James Chen's daughter." I smiled, recognizing the family resemblance. "Your grandfather is a good man. He saved my life." "He says you saved his," Rebecca replied. "But that's not why I'm here. My stepmother just had my father change his will. I'm getting nothing but my mother's old jewelry box. Everyone says I should be grateful for that much, that I'm lucky to get anything as the daughter from the first marriage." I studied her carefully. "And what do you think?" "I think," she paused, then straightened her shoulders. "I think my mother was too smart to leave me unprotected. I think there's more to that jewelry box than anyone knows, and I think I need help finding out what." I handed her my card. Come see me tomorrow. Bring the jewelry box. And Rebecca? Your instincts are right. Mothers who love their daughters always find a way." She left with hope in her eyes, and I felt the cycle continuing. Another mother's love reaching through time, another daughter discovering her worth, another fortune hidden in plain sight. That night, I returned to my penthouse and stood before the photograph wall. In the center, in its place of honor, hung the original, my inheritance, my salvation, my parents' final gift. Around it spread the evidence of what that gift had become, pictures of the women we'd helped, the companies we'd saved, the families we'd reunited. My phone rang. It was Mr. Chen. "Sophia, I wanted you to know, Daniel's food truck just won a citywide competition. He's donating the prize money to the foundation." "Good for him," I said, and meant it. Daniel would never fully atone for his choices, but he was trying. That had to count for something. "There's something else," Mr. Chen continued. "We've been contacted by a law firm in Switzerland. They represent an anonymous client who wants to donate $500 million to the foundation. The only condition is that you personally oversee its distribution." Anonymous? That's unusual. The letter accompanying the donation said, "For all the daughters who were told they were charity cases, from someone who knows how it feels." I smiled, suspecting I knew who our benefactor was. There were others like me out there, women who'd discovered their worth despite everything, who'd claimed their inheritances despite the odds. We were a sisterhood of survivors, united by our refusal to accept the labels others tried to place on us. "Accept the donation," I said, "and start a new division. Call it the Hidden Treasures Initiative, for every woman who suspects there's more to her inheritance than meets the eye." After hanging up, I poured myself a glass of wine and raised it to the photograph. "We did it, Mom and Dad. We didn't just win, we changed the game entirely." The city sparkled below, full of hidden treasures and secret empires, full of daughters discovering their worth and mothers protecting from beyond. Somewhere out there, another Victoria was scheming. But somewhere else, another Sarah was building fortresses of love. And somewhere, in a small apartment or a grand boardroom, another young woman was holding what seemed worthless: a photograph, a jewelry box, a letter, not knowing she held a kingdom in her hands. The war between those who would diminish daughters and those who would protect them would continue. But now those daughters had an army. They had resources. They had proof that charity cases could become queens, that obligations could become empires, that the secretary's daughter could own the whole damn building. Most importantly, they had the knowledge that love, real love, the kind that plans decades ahead and fights from beyond the grave, always finds a way. I thought about my father's words in his final message, "Go show them what a Morrison woman can do." We all had, and we were just getting started. 10 years have passed since I found that photograph, and the world has changed dramatically. The Morrison Hayes Foundation is now the largest organization of its kind, with offices in 30 countries and an endowment of over $10 billion. We've helped thousands of women reclaim their inheritances, start businesses, and escape toxic families. But more importantly, we've changed the conversation. No longer can families easily disinherit daughters, dismiss them as charity cases, or steal their birthrights. We've made it dangerous to underestimate women, costly to try to diminish them. Daniel now runs a successful restaurant chain, having built his food truck into something remarkable. He donates a percentage of all profits to the foundation and speaks at our events about the danger of raising sons to be weapons against daughters. His transformation hasn't erased the past, but it's proof that even the most poisoned minds can choose differently. Victoria died in prison last year. A heart attack, they said, though rumors suggested Eleanor had reached her even from her own cell. I attended the funeral, not for Victoria, but to ensure she was really gone. Only 3 people came: Daniel, myself, and surprisingly, Mr. Brennan, the lawyer who'd read the will that started everything. I knew something was wrong. he told me after the service. "Your father would never have written that will willingly. I'm sorry I couldn't do more." "You witnessed it," I said. "That's all we needed. The rest, my parents had already handled." Eleanor Garrett is still alive, still in prison, still sending occasional letters that my security team intercepts. They're always the same. Promises that the Garrett legacy will continue, that someone will eventually succeed where she and Victoria failed. I keep the letters in a file labeled motivation, reminders of why our work matters. Last month, something extraordinary happened. Rebecca Chen, the young woman who'd approached me after my Harvard speech, made headlines when she exposed a massive fraud ring targeting first-generation wealth families. The jewelry box her mother had left her contained USB drives with evidence of a conspiracy that went back decades. Her stepmother was just one small player in a much larger game. "You were right," Rebecca told me over coffee after the arrests. "Mothers who love their daughters always find a way." She's now heading our Asian division, helping daughters across the continent discover their hidden treasures. But perhaps the most meaningful moment came just last week. I was visiting my parents' graves. They're buried side by side in a quiet cemetery overlooking the ocean. I go there when I need to think, to remember, to feel close to them. I wasn't alone. A young woman, maybe 19, stood at a grave nearby, crying. Something about her posture, her obvious grief mixed with anger, felt familiar. "First visit?" I asked gently. She startled, wiping her eyes. "My dad died 6 months ago, left everything to my stepbrother, said I wasn't really family because I was adopted." I studied her carefully. "What did he leave you?" She laughed bitterly. "His old laptop, broken, won't even turn on. My stepmother said it was generous considering." "Have you had it looked at by a professional?" "Why would I? It's junk." I handed her my card. "Bring it to this address tomorrow. Ask for Jennifer. Tell her I sent you. She has a team that specializes in recovering data from old devices." The girl looked at the card, then at me, recognition dawning. "You're Sophia Morrison Hayes. You're the photograph woman." "I am. And you might be the laptop woman." Things of value are often hidden in plain sight. Your father might have been forced to write that will, but parents who love their children always find a way to protect them. She clutched the card like a lifeline. "You really think?" "I think fathers who leave their daughters broken laptops might be leaving them more than anyone realizes. Come tomorrow. We'll find out together." As she walked away, hope replacing despair in her steps, I turned back to my parents' graves. Still protecting daughters, I told them. Still finding the treasures. Still showing them what Morrison Hayes women can do. The wind rustled through the trees, and for a moment, I could almost hear my mother's laugh, my father's proud voice. They were gone, but their love remained, encoded in legal documents and USB drives, in photographs and letters, in the empire they'd built to protect me and the foundation that now protected others. I thought about the photograph that had started it all, now in a climate-controlled vault, preserved for future generations. Someday it would be in a museum, part of the story of how women fought back against those who would diminish them. But for now, it remained what it had always been, proof that love finds a way, that mothers and fathers can protect their children even from beyond the grave, and that sometimes the greatest treasures come disguised as worthless things. The sun was setting as I left the cemetery, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new Victorias to fight, new daughters to save. But tonight, I would go home to my penthouse, pour a glass of wine, and look at my wall of photographs, hundreds of women who discovered their worth, reclaimed their inheritances, rewritten their stories. All because 23 years ago, a brilliant lawyer named Sarah Morrison looked at her baby daughter and thought, "Someone will try to hurt her someday, but I won't let them. I'll build her a fortress so strong that not even death can breach it." And she did. They both did. The charity case had become a queen. The obligation had become an empire. The secretary's daughter had become unstoppable. And this story? It's not ending. It's spreading. Every daughter who reads this, every woman who recognizes herself in these words, every parent who wants to protect their child, they're all part of it now. Because the truth is, we're all hiding treasures in plain sight. We're all worth more than the labels others put on us. We're all one photograph away from discovering our kingdoms. The only question is, what will you do when you find yours? End.